Ever thought about quitting or stopping?
What's the matter with you? I can't swim!
I don't want to be sitting in a rocking chair somewhere and go, oh, I should have, I could have.
I was just kind of wondering why your name and phone number were in the address books of two of the men arrested at Watergate.
For decades, Robert Redford has been the golden face of Hollywood, the rebel, the charmer, the man who could steal a scene with nothing more than a glance. But when news of his passing broke on September 16th, the world thought they knew the full story.
Robert Redford passed away today.
The actor Robert Redford has died.
Beloved actor Robert Redford has died at the age of 89.
Fans believed he had lived the life of a legend and simply faded away peacefully in his sleep. Case closed, or so it seemed. However, as details of a leaked autopsy report slowly surfaced, another picture began to form. A picture that once looked like a peaceful passing suddenly had an air of mystery tied around it.
And tonight, Hollywood is mourning the quintessential movie star following his death at the age of 89.
And here's the kicker. Buried inside that report were details so chilling, so unexpected, that it changes the way we remember his journey entirely. So grab a seat, because what we're about to unpack isn't just a story about stardom.
The legendary actor Robert Redford, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood in the 1970s. He was also an activist, known for his political activism as well, for his founding of the Sundance Film Festival too. We have just had it confirmed that Robert Redford has died. He was 89.
It's a story about secrets, survival, and the silent battles even legends can't outrun. To understand the weight of those revelations, we first have to revisit the legacy that made Robert Redford untouchable in the first place.
Another source. The guy just is confirmed. If there's any doubt, we can run it tomorrow.
You don't have to. The story's solid, for sure.
It's just got a hole in his gold. Okay, we go with it.
Redford's legacy. You know how every generation has that one actor who just defines the whole era? For the late 60s and 70s, that guy was Robert Redford.
You know, we did a political thriller tonight. He did 3 Days of the Condor, All the President's Men. He was an exceptional director as well as actor. I mean, he was a hero to many in our industry, including me.
From the late 1960s through the 1980s, Redford wasn't just a star, he was the star. The blonde outlaw in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The charming con man in The Sting. The relentless reporter in All the President's Men. Seriously, this man was everywhere. He was basically Hollywood's golden boy, handsome, charming, and somehow making it look effortless every single time. And here's the crazy part. He wasn't just an actor. He was also a force behind the camera. His directorial debut, Ordinary People, 1980, didn't just earn him praise, it earned him an Academy Award for Best Director. First film, first Oscar. Talk about setting the bar high. Then there's Sundance. Not the outlaw character, the film festival. Redford founded the Sundance Institute in the early 80s, and what started as a small passion project for indie filmmakers snowballed into the Sundance Film Festival, one of the most important platforms for independent cinema in the world.
About 40 miles up the valley in Park City, Utah, Robert Redford puts on his annual Sundance Film Festival, which he conceived as a place for new filmmakers to show off their work.
Without Redford's vision, we might never have seen the rise of directors like Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, or Ava DuVernay. So yeah, the man wasn't just living Hollywood history, he was shaping it. And at this point, fans saw him as untouchable, because through it all, Redford projected an image of health, youthfulness, and timelessness. He was the actor who never seemed to age, the director who never stopped innovating, the activist who never stopped caring about the world around him. He wasn't just another celebrity. He was a symbol of resilience, But here's the thing. That image, that untouchable vibe, it wasn't the whole story. While the rest of us were caught up in his films, his festival, his activism, something else was quietly unfolding in the background. Because even legends eventually feel the weight of time. And with Redford, those first cracks started to show years before most people even noticed. Because behind the curtain, Redford's health had been deteriorating quietly, long before the public caught on. The first signs. Something was wrong. The unraveling didn't begin with headlines. It began with not-so-obvious clues. A skipped festival appearance. A delayed project. Moments that slipped past casual fans, but were glaring red flags to those who watched him closely. Throughout the 2000s and early 2000s, his appearances on screen slowed down. Sure, he still delivered powerhouse performances, most famously, All Is Lost. In 2013, had him basically carrying a whole film with no dialogue, no lines, no big supporting cast, just Redford versus the ocean. And he crushed it. Critics loved it. But fans noticed he looked older, weaker, like time was finally catching up. Fast forward to 2018. Out of nowhere, he drops the bomb. He was done acting. Just like that. And the way he phrased it, almost too clean. Too perfect. He told Entertainment Weekly that it was about moving on to the next phase and not wanting to drag it out. Which, okay, makes sense. But let's be honest, nobody really believed it was only about choice.
Well, yeah, you don't like talking about your end. I mean, who does? You know, I can't do this forever. I've been doing it since I was 21. As you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's enough. That's enough.
People around him, friends, co-stars, even journalists, started whispering that the change was more than just retirement vibes. He looked thinner, his energy wasn't the same, and his public appearances became rare. Fans who spotted him at events said he seemed more fragile, like the sparkle that had carried him through decades was dimming. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Redford was always private. He didn't share personal struggles with the press, so when these changes started becoming visible, people were left to fill in the blanks. Was it just old age? Or was there something bigger lurking in the background? And that's the moment when the fan base split into two camps, those who accepted his story at face value and those who were convinced he was quietly battling something much deeper. And trust me, the whispers were only just beginning. The private battle he kept hidden. Robert Redford was many things to the world. A leading man, a visionary director, a champion of independent film. But to those closest to him, he was something else entirely. A man obsessed with privacy. Unlike many of his peers, Redford lived with an almost militant commitment to keeping his personal life out of the spotlight. No tabloid scandals, no messy confessions on late-night talk shows. He gave the press only what he wanted them to see. Never more. It was a strategy that built his mystique, but it was also a shield that hid more than most people realized. Because as early as 2005, the cracks began to appear. That year, Redford underwent a major heart surgery. The news barely surfaced. There were no magazine covers, no paparazzi frenzy. It was buried intentionally, some insiders claimed. The narrative presented to the public was simple. Robert Redford was fine, resilient, untouched. But the medical truth painted a different picture. Open heart surgery isn't a small procedure. It leaves scars, both physical and invisible. And for a man in his late 60s at the time, it suggested that his health was far more fragile than his public appearances allowed anyone to believe. Yet Redford pressed forward, attending premieres, directing films, even standing at the helm of the Sundance Festival, as if nothing had happened. Was this sheer willpower? Or was it calculated? A decision to protect his image of vitality at all costs. Whispers from industry insiders suggest the latter. Some claimed he feared being seen as weak, that he refused to let the Hollywood machine he had helped build see him diminished. Others argued it was simply his nature, private, guarded, determined to keep the most human parts of himself far from the cameras. But the secrecy came at a price. In the absence of truth, speculation took root. Reports of complications surfaced quietly. Observers noted subtle changes, his gait slower, his frame thinner, his once commanding presence dimmed. Rumors swirled of an ongoing long-term struggle, one Redford never addressed publicly. And here lies the haunting duality. The man the public adored was timeless, indestructible. But the man behind the curtain was fighting a private war against time itself. Years later, when fragments of medical information surfaced, they hinted at what he had chosen never to admit, that Redford had carried this hidden battle for far longer than anyone knew. And as the spotlight faded and the whispers grew louder, one question remained. How long could he keep the truth hidden, and how did his final days hint to that truth? The final days. If you've followed Robert Redford's career, you probably noticed that slow faded from the public eye. It wasn't like he made some big announcement saying, "Hey guys, I'm done." No, it was subtler than that. One day he was everywhere, from festivals to red carpets to interviews, and then, almost without warning, he wasn't. At first, people thought, well, he's earned his rest. He's in his 80s. Let him enjoy life. And honestly, that made sense. Redford wasn't the type to chase attention. If anyone deserved to retire quietly, it was him. But here's where things get interesting. Around 2018, he officially said he was stepping back from acting. Not from life, not from the industry entirely, just from being in front of the camera. It was presented as this graceful exit, and fans respected it. But behind that announcement, something else was happening. In the years that followed, Redford's appearances became rare. The man who once dominated red carpets now avoided them. Even at Sundance, the festival he created and nurtured, his presence grew irregular, then absent. Observers began to wonder, and questions were being raised like, why hasn't Redford been seen at Sundance this year? Or, is he okay? And oh, he looks thinner. There were whispers, but no confirmation. His family, protective as ever, stayed silent. Every photo that did surface was controlled, carefully chosen. His shield of privacy remained intact. Redford gave nothing away publicly. He insisted on dignity, on control. Every photograph that emerged, carefully framed, tightly managed, told only what he wanted the world to see. Behind that curtain, though, the battle was intensifying. Some reports hinted at recurring complications, perhaps tied to his heart condition. Others suggested an illness that had been kept deliberately out of the public eye. His family offered no confirmation, no denial, but their silence spoke louder than words. And in that silence, speculation roared. Journalists whispered of canceled appearances. Each public sighting was scrutinized, analyzed, dissected, but none provided the clarity people longed for. The reality, pieced together from fragments, is this: Robert Redford was retreating, not out of fear, but out of intent. He had lived a life in control of his narrative, and he wasn't about to surrender that control now. His final days were spent not in hospital spotlights or tabloid headlines, but in the private comfort of family and trusted friends. It was, in many ways, the perfect ending for a man who had always chosen mystery over exposure. But mystery has its price. Because when someone as iconic as Redford leaves us quietly, the world doesn't just accept it. The world starts digging. The truth that was uncovered next left fans stunned. And how much of this truth will the autopsy report later reveal? The shocking truth. Okay, so let's be real here. Up until now, Robert Redford's story sounds almost too neat. The Hollywood legend who retires gracefully, spends time with his family, then slips away peacefully. It's clean. It's dignified. It's exactly what you'd expect from a man who controlled his image for decades. But then the truth was far less simple. And this is where the story takes a turn. People start asking questions. The kind of questions you can't just brush off with a smile or a vague press release. For example, why was there such tight control over news around his health? Why was his family so guarded, even after his retirement? Why did insiders speak in hushed tones about complications nobody ever confirmed? And then came the kicker. After his passing, reports began to surface. The first revelation revealed that his heart had never fully recovered from the surgery he underwent in 2005. While Redford appeared to move on, the lingering effects followed him for the rest of his life. Reports suggest that his heart endured recurring strain, the kind that chips away quietly until one day the damage can no longer be ignored. Then came reports about organ complications Redford suffered. Not dramatic, not explosive, but gradual. The kind of decline that creeps in behind the mask of everyday life. For Redford, it seems that years of health challenges kept carefully hidden finally converged in his last chapter. And then there was the third revelation, the one that shook fans most. Toxicology findings, though never publicly confirmed in full, hinted at the delicate balancing act of medications. Too much of one, too little of another. And the consequences ripple. It raised a chilling question. Was Redford not only fighting illness, but also the side effects of the very treatments meant to help him? The shock wasn't in the fact that Redford was ill. It was in the realization that he had kept it hidden for so long. Even those closest to him admitted later that his silence was intentional. He didn't want pity. He didn't want headlines dissecting his every weakness. He wanted, even in illness, to remain the man his fans remembered. Strong, dignified, never aging, and most of all, in control. But that silence came at a cost. Because when the truth surfaced, fans felt blindsided. The myth of immortality, the illusion of invincibility went out the window. Redford, the Sundance Kid, the eternal rebel, had been human all along. Fragile, mortal, vulnerable. Yet, as shocking as this was, details in the report raised even more shocking questions. The questions the report raised. Here's the thing about shocking details. They don't just end the conversation, they start a whole new one. The revelations about Robert Redford's health should have closed the book, right? A legendary actor, a private battle, a dignified exit. Done. But nope. Instead, it raised more questions than answers. For one, fans couldn't help but ask, how long had this really been going on? Was Redford quietly battling illness for years while walking red carpets and shaking hands at Sundance? Was his 2018 retirement really about wanting to step back? Or was it the only way he could keep his health struggles hidden from the public eye? And here's another. Why the secrecy? It wasn't like Redford owed the world his medical chart, but the silence felt deliberate. He didn't just avoid press conferences, he avoided everything. No slip-ups, no candid comments, nothing. That level of control isn't accidental. Then came the whispers about prescriptions. Toxicology notes hinted at a delicate balancing act. Too much of one drug, not enough of another. Experts noted balancing drugs at that stage of life is like walking a tightrope. One miscalculation, intentional or not, and the results are irreversible. You can see where this is going. Could the very medications meant to keep him stable have made things worse? And here's where the debate really caught fire. Some fans argued he knew. He must have known. Others countered, no, his family shielded him, kept the full truth from him so he wouldn't live in fear. But the question that hit hardest? Was his retirement really voluntary? The way he framed it in 2018, it sounded like a graceful exit. But what if it wasn't a choice at all? What if Redford had been pushed off the stage by a body that couldn't keep up with the legend anymore? And then, just when it felt like the story wasn't complex enough, a final hidden detail surfaced. Not rumors, not speculations. It was real, confirmed. And once people saw it, the entire narrative shifted. And that's where things get truly shocking. What doctors found that few expected. The truth, when it surfaced, was not the ending anyone had scripted for Robert Redford. Doctors found evidence of a condition long concealed, a battle fought in silence. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't random. It was a progressive illness, one that had been advancing quietly for years, perhaps decades. This revelation reframed everything. His retirement in 2018, his absence from Sundance, his visibly frail frame in those rare photographs, each, in retrospect, was not coincidence, but consequence. The most striking detail was the consistency. Redford had never once allowed it to enter the public sphere. For a man who shaped his career on commanding the screen, his greatest performance may have been the one he staged off it, convincing the world that he was fine. But reports suggested otherwise. The wear on his body was undeniable, and yet there was no trace of public acknowledgement, no statement, no interview, nothing. Which begs the haunting question, why keep it hidden? Some believe it was control. Redford had always controlled his narrative, from the roles he chose to the festival he built. Revealing his condition would have ceded that control to the media, and he wasn't about to let that happen. Family statements later suggested something powerful. Redford's privacy wasn't about denial. It was about dignity. He didn't want the world to see him fragile. He didn't want headlines like Hollywood legend battles illness. He wanted his life to be remembered for art, mentorship, and his influence on cinema, not his decline. For decades, Redford embodied strength. And yet, in the end, the truth was fragility. That contradiction didn't diminish him. It made him human. And for many fans, it made him more relatable than ever before. But there was still one more revelation ahead. A detail buried at the very end of the findings. The one that redefined everything and put it all into perspective. Not just Redford's final years, but the way the world remembers him now. And when it surfaced, it didn't just surprise people, it left them speechless. The final revelation. Here it is, the moment everything we've been building toward comes into focus. The report, the subtle hints, the speculation, it all points to one truth. And the truth, when it emerges, doesn't always align with the legend. In Robert Redford's case, it's the heart. a quiet, relentless force that few ever suspected. Redford may have been quietly battling a progressive heart condition in his later years. And it makes sense. Back in 2005, Redford underwent a major heart surgery, a procedure that was deliberately kept under wraps. At the time, it seemed like an isolated event, a single chapter in a life full of accomplishments. But as anyone familiar with cardiac issues knows, one surgery rarely solves everything. The heart has its own timeline, and sometimes the complications appear years later. And according to insiders, that may have been exactly what Redford faced in his final decade. Imagine that, a man whose life and career were built on strength, control, and resilience, quietly living with a heart that was slowly weakening. You can picture him on the Sundance red carpet, or stepping out for an interview, smiling and steady as ever, while inside, his body was fighting a battle no one saw. And here's the thing, that battle explains a lot. His gradual withdrawal from acting, the limited public appearances, the careful avoidance of events. It wasn't just age. It wasn't just preference. It was all signs of a man quietly contending with something serious. Yet, even in that struggle, he lived fully, creatively, intentionally, and with the same grace he brought to every role. Fans were stunned, speechless, because this revelation shattered the illusion of invincibility. It reframed Redford not just as a Hollywood icon, but as a human being, vulnerable, private, and quietly courageous. The sense of control that carried him through decades of life, art, and influence also carried him through his most private battle. And he did it on his own terms with dignity, grace, and courage.
There's only the trying, the rest is not our business.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite phrases, because you can't guarantee where the trying is going to get you. So you can't guarantee the result, but the only thing there is in place is the trying.
Robert Redford was more than a Hollywood legend. He was a man who lived life on his own terms, quietly navigating struggles the world never saw. His legend wasn't built on invincibility, but on the grace, dignity, and resilience he displayed both on screen and off. From iconic roles in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting, to directing, producing, and founding the Sundance Film Festival, Redford shaped Hollywood like few others could. Yet his final years remind us that even icons are human, and some battles are fought in silence. Medical whispers, subtle signs, and speculation about his health all point to a story of quiet courage. He chose privacy over headlines, dignity over sympathy, and in doing so, left a powerful lesson. Strength isn't always loud, and heroism doesn't always make the front page. His films will live forever, but his private struggle reminds us that even legends carry hidden battles. The tension between public persona and private reality is what made him truly remarkable. Comments. Either way, the man we thought we knew was far more extraordinary than anyone could have imagined. So here's the big question. Was he right to keep his struggle private, or should the world have known sooner? Share your thoughts below in the comments.